that moment when there's not a next page to do my book review on. So 99, you can do 99 reviews. Or 98 actually, because this is book number 99 of the year for me. Make it make sense. Who made this? Lit Joy. Make it make sense. So we got creative, and this is what I came up with. Okay. Why does it sound like Sinners? This one's going to be the reset as we get ready for the new reading month, which will be December. My book club poll is currently live, but by the time this video is up, I don't think it will be. I think it will already be concluded. So, you know, stay tuned for that if you want to join me reading a big chunky fantasy book next month. But let's look at the weekly TBR. First, we had the weekly quote. And now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye, by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not. But that is true. It's hard. It's hard to be like, to fathom, but that is really how life is. But yeah, hard to accept, I guess. For my mood read, which I should be finishing this week, is The Singular 14 Society's Yuletide Guide to High Strangeness by Tobias Whalen, artwork by Emily Whalen, and a foreword by Joshua Cutchin. This is taking ancient mythology and saying how some of our cryptids and paranormal stuff we see and UFO stuff that we see today could have been what inspired that. Like aliens could have inspired certain stories in ancient times and that kind of stuff. Now, the main focus of this week, I think I'm going to finish it tomorrow. I have about 80 pages left, but this is dense. It is a lot to take in. That's The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11 by Garrett M. Graff. This is the highest rated nonfiction book on my TBR according to Goodreads. Next, we have my mood read, which is a sci-fi climate Something New Under the Sun by Alexandra Kleeman. A bold, unsettling tale of personal ambition and environmental catastrophe, as entertaining and beautiful as it is devastating. And on ebook, I am reading The White Queen by Philippa Gregory. 3 different yet equally relentless women who will scheme, manipulate, and seduce their way onto the English throne. There is a TV show on Stars if you want to check it out. It's really good. But I do think this does go a little bit deeper than the show does. But I think I prefer the show to the book so far, but I'm only like 20% into that. But that's the weekly TBR. book's called Fantasy Nonfiction Romance Sci-Fi. I just got done reading And the Only Plane in the Sky. For the day I read 41 pages. I only have 24 pages left, so yes, I will be finishing this book tomorrow. We could possibly be finishing 2 books tomorrow. I'm at 88% in here, so I don't know how long my next essay is in there. But let's go to my notes. I totally forgot to make a marker on what page my notes start on, so it's gonna take a minute. Not for y'all though, but for me. I totally stopped recording for some reason, but chapter 60 was my first highlight of the day. Yeah, basically most of the notes I took today were just highlighting people's discussion points or whatever that stood out to me. Sorry, I need lotion. So this is from Celine Haga, staff of the U.S. House of Representatives in the hours and days. Yeah, where they all, the senators, whoever, the reps, y'all know, I get all that confused. But they all got together at like 7 o'clock or whatever at the Capitol after everything went down. And they all just randomly started singing God Bless America. So she's like, in the hours and days later, when it replayed on TV, it felt trite and corny, but in the moment that night, it felt like we were clinging to something, like a lifeline. And like that, because when I first heard they did this, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like when the celebrities sing Imagine during COVID. So it's good to know that Celine, anyway, is self-aware. But I mean, I do think that's powerful. Like, I don't, you know, I'm not making fun of them. So then on chapter 62, we have, yeah, this one I highlighted, from Richard Kolko, who is a special agent FBI. He started the day in the Atlanta FBI field office and was assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. But by midday, he was driving to Washington, D.C. with another agent, a New York agent. So they're going on 95. They're speeding because they're, you know, like, shit hit the fan. They had to get there quick, and they get pulled over. Just know, and they're on I-95. I would have taken 85, but okay. But on 95 in North Carolina, know that they are out there. The state troopers are out there, and they're gonna pull you over. He gets pulled, and they're like, so you know, the cop is like, do you know how fast you're going? You know, all the stuff that happens when you get pulled over. And so you know, the cop is like, why are you in such a rush? And he's like, where would the FBI, and you know, show the badge and everything. And he was like, go get them, boys. Like, sending them off. I just thought that was kind of funny. Then we have, yeah, this is going from funny to emotional. We have Beverly Eckert, who is wife of Sean Rooney, vice president of risk management at Aon Corporation in the South Tower on the 98th floor. And she's talking about when they met when they were 16 at a high school dance, and then her husband passed at 50 at the World Trade Center. And she didn't want that day to end, it says, as terrible as it was, because she didn't want to go to sleep, because as long as she was awake, it would still be a day that her and her husband, you know, were together, were alive together. And I can definitely relate to that. When I've lost loved ones, I'm like, I don't want this day to end. Or there's a lot of times where maybe, yeah, like I take screenshots at like midnight on like my birthday or Christmas or whatever, because I'm like, it's so special. And when it is over, it's just like a very depressing feeling. But this one, we have Vaughn Alex. I don't know if they're male or female. I'm not familiar with that name. But they're a ticket agent at Washington Dulles International Airport in Virginia. So they, unbeknownstly, you know, they were the ticket agent, and therefore let the terrorist onto the plane, because they were just doing their job. You know, they got families, they got students all on this flight. And everybody is looking at them like, you know, giving them dirty looks when they get to work the next day, because at this point, Vaughn, they don't know that they were the person who was the ticket master that let for that flight, 77, AA-77. Oh, I think that's the right one. I'm sorry. I think that's the right one. So I'm like, people are awful, because how could this person have known that those guys were terrorists? Like, yeah, everybody who was judging them, you had the same job. What if it had been you? Like, hopefully in the 24 years since then, they've learned. And those are all of my notes for the day. I'm over a quarter of the way into something new under the sun, so I do want to go over my notes for the first quarter. But basically right now, so a big thing in this book is WAT-R, so W-A-T-R. It's scientifically made water, I guess. You know how they always talk about making meat in a lab? So basically California, in a drought, all the fresh water dried up, and they have water. That's what everybody drinks, and it's what's in the plumbing. That is what everything is. Our main characters, they all have their opinions of it. I don't know how much the blurb says. I have not read this whole blurb, so I am going to go over the notes now. I'm just shocked that this is a woman writing this book. Like, she does great at writing a man. Like, this man, okay, if you've seen the show Glow, he reminds me of Sam on that show, because he is a writer, but like a book writer, and he is having his book be adapted into a movie. He doesn't really know what he's signed up for. He's signed up to be like he's essentially become a PA to Cassidy Carter. Because she does go by her TV name sometimes, like of a character. So Cassidy Carter, going into the next point, it's like she's really at this point in her career more famous for her videos that are just her being wild in public rather than her acting. Like, this one that we have a freak out of is her buying like tampons, but like it was like, you know, the video of Nancy Mace when she's going off on that guy in Ulta, that is like what it was. Like, she was reminding me of Nancy Mace. Yeah. And now I'm just getting like Britney Spears vibes, because she was a child star and everybody thinks she's kind of crazy, and she's trying to get her life back, trying to find herself, and also in this dystopian, like, it's a hard time saying dystopian because this is like our modern world. And really, this is, if you take all the California stereotypes and make them real, like, if you're not from California, and like the viewpoints, like my grandma's always like, because I used to want to live in California, that she would be like, oh, I wouldn't want to live there, they have earthquakes and wildfires and all the time. And then you see people who are like, oh, like people on the East Coast and the South are like, oh, they're all like blue-haired liberals out there. And so these people in this book are so pretentious, and their discussions are just so much of an eye roll for me to read, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I don't care about hearing these people's conversations about this stuff. Like, sure, it's interesting when you're having those discussions, but reading, it's like, no, it's so pretentious. And it's supposed to be that way because, like, not Sam, what's his name, Patrick, our main character, he's like looking in and he's having that eye roll, but I'm a little too immersed into it, I guess. And something interesting, the name Billington has come up in the past two mood reads, and Beheld, Eleanor Billington and her husband, was it John, I think was his name. And in this one, there's a side character named Billington, and I'm like, why does this name keep coming up? It's a sign from the universe. I don't know what about, because I don't think I know anybody with that name. But those are all my notes. Yeah, I like the concept of this world that we're in with the dried up water, but I don't understand, because California's a state, so why is it not, like, why is the federal government not doing anything about it? Not having water, I guess they're like, water is fine. But to give you all more info on it, it's East Coast novelist Patrick Hamlin has come to Hollywood with simple goals in mind, overseeing the production of a film adaptation. Yeah, so okay, I'll just read it. One of his books, preventing starlet Cassidy Carter's disruptive behavior from derailing said production and turning this last-ditch effort at career resurrection, we'll just use that word, into the sort of success that will dazzle his wife and daughter back home. But California is not as he imagined. Drought, wildfire, and corporate corruption are omnipresent, and the company behind a mysterious new brand of synthetic water seems to be at the root of it all. Patrick partners with Cassidy after having been her reluctant chauffeur for weeks, and the two of them investigate the sun-scorched city's darker crevices, where they discover that catastrophe resembles order until the last possible second. In this often witty and all too timely story, Alexandra Kleeman grapples with the corruptive of our the corruption of our environment in the age of alternative facts. Something new under the sun is a meticulous and deeply felt accounting of our very human anxieties, liabilities, dependencies, and ultimately responsibility to Happy Tuesday. So I just finished The Only Plane in the Sky. We're gonna go over my thoughts. I don't have a star rating yet. We will find that out together. Here's my pencil so I can do that. But it is going to definitely be a little over 4-star, but not quite a 5-star. So let's start with the impact. This is a book that it's a lot. This is a lot to take in, and it is an oral history, you know, so you're just getting quotes by people, but this is dense. This is just so much information and emotion that you're taking in that it can be draining to read. And I'm not saying that as a fault, but I want to let you know that you might be like, oh, it's just quotes, it's gonna be such a quick read. No. It's a powerful, moving, informative piece. And when I was reading this, I found myself, you know, literally holding my breath reading a chapter and couldn't let go of that breath until, you know, I got done reading. It's just so much to take in. And to add to that there were so many stories. So I'm somebody who I am fascinated by 9/11, hence why I'm reading this book, because there's a whole chapter in here about people who were children during 9/11 and how this has impacted our lives going forward, of just how this changed history, American history, and, you know, later goes, everything is world history in my opinion, but, you know, besides the point. There's somebody who doesn't really read that much about 9/11, just every year, like, you're on the date, you're like, oh, never forget, you know, posting the pictures of the Twin Towers. This will blow your mind. This will be a lot. I do think maybe if I didn't know a lot about 9/11, this would be a full 5 out of 5 star read, where I would just be so amazed and stunned. So, but there was still so much that I didn't know. A lot of times when I read, a lot of times it's people's obituaries that I read, and just stories of people who did pass away on that day. But this is really a story of survivors and seeing their points of view. But it's so hard to put into words. I have a hard time reviewing books that are good books, you know, that are great books. It's really hard for me to review. But you are seeing all these people's stories, and there's so many stories that I didn't know, because so much of the focus that you see online will be on New York. And that's talked about how the people in Pennsylvania were like, why don't we ever get any coverage? And then with Washington, Arlington, the Pentagon, that is, I think the reason we don't hear about it that much is, one, New York is a lot bigger city than these other places that were hit, so you have a lot more people that witnessed it and were recording and whatever. But the Pentagon is like a top secret facility, you know, like, you're not allowed to take pictures there. It's, you know, the only real footage we have of the plane hitting the building is just security footage that is like stop motion. It's not like a video that you're watching right now. It's not like that. And with it being a government building, you're only going to hear a lot of these stories from government people or civilians who are working at the Pentagon. So I never hear those stories. I thought that was incredibly fascinating. But we also hear from people who were in the government at that time, and what their views on it. And something that really amazed me. So, I mean, it's obvious, but I never thought about it. People on the ground at, like, what has come to be known as Ground Zero, people in the Twin Towers, people in the Pentagon, whatever, they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know the extent of the people who were at home watching on television, because, you know, you're getting that information thrown at you. But the people who are on the ground, they just didn't understand or comprehend how big of an event that they were part of. I guess that's how to word that. So impact, yes, would be a 5-star. Research, a 5-star as well, because we are hearing this from, on the back, I think it said, yeah, nearly 500 government officials, first responders, witnesses, survivors, friends, and family members. Almost 500 people we are hearing from. And just to think, I want to know how many years this book took to put together, because I cannot comprehend that. And we're hearing from all different kinds of people from all different walks of life. I mean, we're hearing all the way from the vice president to people who were just parents on that day in Kansas, you know, like, nowhere near 9/11, but how this event had an impact on everybody. So it's so important to hear everybody's opinions. So yes, research gets a 5. Structure, since I'm having to think, I am going to say a 4, because there were just times where I was just wanting to get back to something, and it seemed like it would take forever to get through certain instances, and to yeah, I just wish it flowed better at times, I guess is how I would word that. And then writing style was my biggest issue. I am going to give that a 4, because I say it's a bit my biggest issue, but in the long scheme of things, it's not that big of an issue. Is there's just, at the start of the book, this was really confusing for me, and I worried. I was like, should I have been doing this on an audiobook? But it did all come together, but we're getting all these names and all this information thrown at us that it was just a lot for me to take in, and I was getting confused having to, you know, turn back the page, be like, okay, who is this, and what is their role, where did they work, who are they related to, where I was just getting really confused and overwhelmed by all that, and was constantly, you know, having to go back to see what was going on here, I guess, who these people were and what their relation to the story was. So we are going to do our do the math here. So 5 plus 5 plus 8 essentially is 18 divided by 4. So 4.5. So yes, this is going to go into Goodreads as a 5-star, but I will make notes saying this is a 4.5. So this is a great, fantastic book. One of the best books I've read this year. Here, you need to read it. Oh, it's Wednesday. Oh my gosh, the lighting is really weird right now. It's 1:25 when I'm filming this, but I just finished The Singular 14th Society Yuletide Guide to High Strangeness by Tobias Whalen, artwork by Emily Whalen, and forward by Joshua Cutchin. I'm giving this a 4-star. I don't really do decimal ratings for collections, anthologies. Is that the right word? I think that's the right word. As you can see, I have not had caffeine. I'm about to have my caffeine at 2 o'clock, but I am loving the vibe today, because we are like about to go full force into the holiday season. I'm going to a hockey game tonight. I have not been to a hockey game in like a month, because I couldn't go to the last 2 home games. And then all the other games have been, well, there was a bye week and then road games. So we're finally back at home, and I'm so excited. And it just feels like really festive, like, yes, it's happening. We have Stranger Things tonight as well. I am watching the last episode of season 4 right now. It's like 2.5 hours, which is insane to me. I think TV shows need to stay at TV show lengths. Like, if you want to have all this content, just do multiple episodes. Like, I don't get why do 2 hours. I think it's, I'm about to say it's selfish, but y'all know, I think the creators of Stranger Things, the people who run, I'm not gonna say the Duffer Brothers, but like the people who run the Stranger Things like Twitter accounts and all that, I think they're really shitty to the fans. Like, I hate how they tag along those fans. Sorry, I love the show, but the fandom, I do not interact with that fandom. That was the fandom that made me be like, I don't want to be a part of fandom culture anymore. I like my sports teams, but for like pop culture, no, I don't interact with fan culture anymore. But we're here to talk about the Yuletide Guide to High Strangeness. So as I said, I'm giving this a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. It really just, it's not too scary, because I think a lot of times when people hear about like high strangeness, they think it's going to be scary. I mean, it might scare some people. Like, it will make you feel, some of these stories, really only one of them really made me feel creeped out, but it's so interesting just thinking of how thin the veil can be. It's so funny with Stranger Things, you know, but how that veil can be so thin between what is real and what isn't. And I just kind of felt seen reading some of these stories of my own like high strangeness experiences. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can relate to this so much. I've felt this feeling that these people were feeling before. Now my complaint is, so we have these like goat men, like people who like half goat, half human, kind of hybrid looking things. We have like panthers, you know, where panthers aren't supposed to be. We have aliens, gnomes. The author's all for that. He's like, that's awesome, all that's real. But we get to people who claim to have seen Santa Claus, myself included in that. Mine wasn't, I didn't see the figure of Santa Claus, but I saw something strange on Christmas Eve. So those kind of stories, because there was also a section about the Easter Bunny, and those stories, they kind of like, I didn't feel creeped out, but they were just so similar. I kind of got Uncanny Valley vibes. But with those stories, he just kind of waves them off and is like, whatever, like, they're definitely not real. But with all full-fledged believing in all the other stuff, I'm like, this is a Yuletide. You would think Santa Claus would play such a bigger part into it. And I just feel like he kind of weighed them off and kind of looked down upon those people, kind of acting like they're kind of dumb for believing that. And I didn't like that. So that was my biggest issue with that, where I just kind of got an icky feeling. I'm sorry my voice is going out. It's been doing this lately. But yeah, I wasn't about that. But overall, yes, I would recommend, because there are some stories where, like, my friend Marquise, I literally took pictures of this whole section to send to him, because I was like, this is so fascinating, you need to read it. So I do think there's a lot of really interesting stories in here, and perfect for this time of year as we are going into the holiday season. Okay, I just got back from the store for getting some things that I'm going to need. Sorry, I see it's a beautiful sunset out there, but I got stuff for decorations, like, because one of my hooks that I put my wreaths on, it broke, so I had to get a new one of those. I had to get a tote that was for my fall clothes to go into, since we're gonna be switching over to winter soon. So I just had to get, you know, and then some essential stuff like floss and wipes, you know, fun stuff, and ice cream. But I do want to talk about Just Mercy, which is the book that I started today. I am doing the audiobook. It is fairly, like, it's on the shorter side of medium length. It's 11 hours. And this one is by Bryan Stevenson, and he himself is narrating the audiobook. Also, it's a story of justice and redemption. There is a movie, and it was in the 100 Notable Books of 2014 by the New York Times. I'm going to read the back first, since I didn't do that for y'all, and then go into my thoughts. I only read 10% because, again, I'm going to the hockey game in about an hour and a half, so I don't have time to read more of this today, but we will read it, excuse me, tomorrow on Thanksgiving. So the description: from one of the most brilliant and influential lawyers of our time comes an unforgettable true story about the redeeming potential of mercy. Bryan Stevenson was a gifted young attorney when he founded the Equal Justice Initiative, a legal practice dedicated to defending the poor, the wrongly condemned, and those trapped in the furthest reaches of our criminal justice system. One of his first cases was that of Walter McMillan, a young man sentenced to die for a notorious murder he didn't commit. The case drew Stevenson into a tangle of conspiracy, political machination, I don't know that word, and legal brinksmanship, and transformed his understanding of mercy and justice forever. And already, as I said, I'm only 10% into it, like 35 pages to be exact into it, and it has me asking myself a lot of big questions, and I think that's something so important about books, that they can do that. Because I'm somebody who, I do not believe in the death penalty. I want to say that. If that upsets you, sorry, but that's just my belief. You're subject to have your own. I'm not trying to push my belief on anybody. So it's just because you, okay, people, I'm not saying Walter McMillan did, because he didn't, but there's people who, you know, like murderers, rapists, who, you know, do all these awful violent crimes. And it's so hard to think, because if you're looking at this, because, you know, I've told y'all before, I grew up in like an evangelical background, like with my schooling. And it's like all mercy and forgiveness is thrown aside for certain crimes. And I totally understand that. And it does anger me and disgust me at crimes that people do. But do you not preach about a merciful God, a God who forgives and all of that, and that it's not our place to judge, but God's place to judge? But suddenly when there's a hot topic, you know, crime that is sweeping the nation, everybody has to jump in on it and be like, I want him to go to death row, I want him to be executed, whatever. And I do believe people can change and people can grow. The book that really taught me this was about a murderer. Charlie Says, which I'm not saying Charles Manson, but it's about the girl, she was, well, she's a woman now, was released on parole, I think parole recently. But one of the girls who was a part of the Manson murders, you know, she was in prison for like 60 years, probably a little less than that, but, you know, over 50 years in prison. And she did understand, she's like, what I did was wrong. And, you know, she grew as a person. Now, obviously all people aren't going to grow, but I think all people have that capability of getting an understanding of what they did, and what they did was wrong. Sorry that I'm sweaty. But we are going to go into my thoughts. So the first part was the introduction, and this is when Bryan Stevenson, he is at law school at Harvard, and he takes an internship in Atlanta, and he's going to what they call Jackson. That's the town that the prison that death row is in. So he's going to death row and meeting with a man who is on death row, and this is his first time meeting anybody on death row. So he is very, very nervous going into this. And I just want to go over some of my tabs. And it just, something with this nonfiction November, I've realized that nonfiction is real life, which, yeah, duh. Like, obviously it's not fiction, it's real life. But that means that not everything's going to go perfect. It's not going to wrap up with a perfect bow, because as I was saying, they're both really nervous. So when Brian's going in there, he's stumbling over his words. You know, the whole drive there, he had a script in his head, like, this is what I'm going to tell Henry. That's the man he's going to meet. When he gets there, obviously none of that happens. And Henry himself is very nervous as well. So it's, you know, very chaotic, like not chaotic where it's bad or anything, but they're just sitting there just stumbling over their words and that kind of stuff. And that just shows that, you know, if this was a fiction book, it probably wouldn't go like that. But this is real life. All these people, you know, they're human. Next, we had the guard was shoving him towards the door roughly. I didn't like the way Henry was being treated, but he continued to smile until before the guard could push him fully out of the room. He planted his feet to resist the officer's shoving. He looked so calm. So, you know, and I'm like, that guard, that just pisses me off, because that's what I'm saying. When there's a crime committed, the criminal is instantly treated like they are not human. They are a monster. And yes, see, that is why I'm so just conflicted reading this, because I'm like, these people do an awful thing, but they're still a human, and how that mind works is just incredibly fascinating. But yeah, the guard on the power trip, that pissed me off. And then just people forget about mercy and forgiveness, and that was kind of the tangent that I went on at the start of this clip. Next, we have this paragraph. I sat down completely stunned. Henry's voice was filled with desire. I experienced his song as a precious gift. I had come into the prison with such anxiety and fear about his willingness, sorry, my thing's blinking, okay, to tolerate my being inadequate. I didn't expect him to be compassionate or generous. I had no right to expect anything from a condemned man on death row. Yet he gave me an astounding measure of his humanity. In that moment, I highlighted this. So Henry altered something in my understanding of human potential, redemption, and hopefulness. Because when he goes, you know, so he was just supposed to sit down and tell this guy, you're not going to be executed in the next year. That's essentially what he was going to go. But then they started talking about their families and music and, you know, all the typical things you would have in a conversation with somebody. And that's what made him realize that, oh, these prisoners, these guys on death row are actually human and they have potential. It's so moving. Next, we have this paragraph. This book is about getting closer to mass incarceration and extreme punishment in America. It is about how easy we condemn people in this country and the injustice we create when we allow fear, anger, and distance to shape the way we treat the most vulnerable among us. Right? And how we end the introduction. An absence of compassion can corrupt the decency of community, estate, and nation. Fear and anger can make us vindictive and abusive, unjust and unfair. Until we all suffer from the absence of mercy, we condemn ourselves as much as we victimize others. The closer we get to mass incarceration and extreme levels of punishment, the more I believe it's necessary to recognize that we all need mercy, we all need justice, and perhaps we all need some measure of unmerited grace. He gets it. Bryan Stevenson, he gets it. So then we had chapter 1, and he's taken this case in Alabama of Walter McMillan. And Walter McMillan So to give you some backstory on him, he is a black man in southern Alabama, and he is older than Brian. I don't know the exact age difference, but he's an older man. Like, he has a wife, he has 3 kids, and he has a business with like wood, the pulp, you know, that they make paper out of. He does good business with the black and white people in his community, but that's not to say that he is perfect. He is a ladies' man and does have affairs from his wife. We are now in the 1980s, and, you know, so Jim Crow still lingers. We will talk about that. But he is at Waffle House, and there's only this white woman that he sees at Waffle House, and she's flirting with him, and he's kind of in his head, he's like, I probably shouldn't go for a white woman. It's not at this time period, and I mean, I still see it today in South Carolina, but he, like, in this time period, that was just very interracial relationships were looked down upon. Also, this woman is married. She is 18 years younger than him, so he's just like, you know, kind of hesitant, but then she gets really obvious about the flirting, so he's like, okay, she's into me, I'm going to have this affair with her. Her husband finds out about the affair, and again, her husband's a white man, and he's like so disgusted that she was having an affair with a black man, so he is going to divorce her, and he wants custody of their children. So there's just a big scandal with all of that. So this woman, her life is, sorry, I'm not remembering her name, but her life is falling apart, and she gets involved with this guy who's not a white guy, I should say, but who's not really that great of a person. And okay, so in their town, this young white girl who is working at, I think it was like a laundromat or something, but you know, like your perfect person, you know, she doesn't have any blemishes to her record, just a young teenage girl who is working at this laundromat gets brutally murdered, and everybody is like, oh my gosh, like, who could have done this? So there were these 2 Latino guys, and who are in the town, who are not from the town, from Florida. That's who the cops instantly go to, but there's, you know, not enough evidence for that. So then another guy, so the girl who was in the affair with Walter, I'm trying to find her name. Karen. So her man gets accused, like, they got accused of murdering another person. So Ralph is the guy who she's in the relationship with. So he changed his story, told investigators that he had been involved in the murder of this other girl, Vicky, along with Karen Kelly and her black boyfriend, Walter. So he brings Walter into it. And then, so the girl, Rhonda, is the girl who I told y'all was the teenage girl who got murdered, like brutally murdered. So Rhonda, so he's like, yeah, also Walter had something to do. He's responsible for Rhonda's murder. So that is how Walter gets put on death row. To some of my, I just want to give y'all like a preface for like what this whole case is about. But yeah, with seeing how interracial marriage was viewed in Alabama in the 1980s is still just so crazy. But you have to remember, yeah, Jim Crow wasn't that long ago, especially going back 40 years. Like, it wasn't that long ago, and people are stubborn and don't like to change, do they? Okay, maybe that was my one tab. But yes, I am enjoying. I feel enjoying is a hard word to say, but this is really making me think a lot, and I love when a book can do that. I got my fan on because, yeah, I'm really sweaty from sitting here. Yeah, it's like in the 70s here. It is quite warm for the day before Thanksgiving, but before the game, because I still have like an hour, a little less than an hour before I get ready, so I am going to read a chapter in Something New Under the Sun. I forgot to turn on that light. So I am back from the game. We won 4-1, so awesome. And I saw 3 deer on the way home, crossing across the road. They all got across. But love me some deer. I never get to see them, so when I do, that's really exciting. Lineup card, that's like, y'all didn't come here for that. I did get a shirt. I've been wanting this shirt for a while, but the merch lines aren't as crazy, so when my dad went to get some popcorn, he was able to pick it up for me. So this shirt, that, yeah, I wanted the one that has the established, so y'all can see that. So I got that shirt, so I need to throw it in the wash. And yeah, for outfit, my shirt is literally from eBay, and my skirt is from Amazon. Yeah, that was like the quickest place. Yeah, I looked at eBay and the thrift stores for months but I finally found one. Like, it took, you know, it was a long hunt, so I had to go to Amazon. Now, I am going to read some of the White Queen. I'm going to eat some Panda Express leftovers that I had for lunch. And then I need to take my makeup off as well and then watch Stranger Things. I am so nervous. I swear if Steve Harrington dies, if Dustin Henderson dies, if Hopper dies, like, and my girl Robin. Y'all know Robin, I've talked about before, is like one of the most relatable characters like I've watched and read, because Rebel Robin is a book and I loved it. So because she's like me and we'll just talk and yeah. That is so relatable. That's what we're doing right now. Like all those characters that I just named, ready to get my heart broken, but I'm like, I will be stunned if it happens tonight, because you know, there's like 3 separate drops and these episodes are probably the length of movies, which I ranted about earlier. I'm not gonna go. Hey guys, happy Thanksgiving. It is 7:13. We have like a Thanksgiving lunch. We ate around noon or 1. No, it was in the 12 o'clock hour when we ate. I am so sleepy because I only got 6 hours of sleep because I was up watching Stranger Things last night, and then I still have 1 episode left, and then you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas, those holidays where you eat a really good meal, I just want to sleep after that. Like these football games that are on right now, and on Christmas the basketball games, no, I'm in my bed sleeping or on the couch sleeping. I am so sleepy. I do want to talk briefly about Stranger Things. So for the episodes I watched, I think I watched like 3 episodes. It was giving me 3-star vibes. It really just felt like a continuation of season 4, which is my least favorite season. I mean, it makes sense that it's a continuation of season 4, but I feel like each one just feels so distinct, and this one just feels like the same as that. But I think the same could probably be said about season 1 and 2. But this one, I feel like we're going over some of the same plot points. The love triangle. Y'all know I am not a fan of love triangles, and I'm just like, move on already. Also, I have not seen the last episode yet, so stuff could happen, but the Duffer brothers are so scared to kill off characters. Even we had like 3 minor characters, even though 1 seems to be a main, but so let's say 2 minor characters. I was like, yeah, my friend Marquise, he texted me, he's like, are they gonna do it? I'm like, I don't know. And they didn't, because like they're so scared to kill off characters. So I'm like, when's it going to happen? When's everybody going to start dying? Or are they not going to die at all? Like, it's kind of annoying. So let's talk about Just Mercy. I read 57 pages in here. I would have liked to read a little more, but again, I was really sleepy, and Fred just will not let me take naps. Like earlier at 4 o'clock when I tried to take a nap, he was just running my shoulder and he was just bathing, and it was really loud, and he's always purring, so that's really loud as well. Next, when I fell asleep in this reading sprint that I was just doing, he kept like putting his paw on my eyes. I don't have my glasses on when laying in bed, or like when I'm not reading, I don't have my glasses on, and he's just like touching my eyes. Sir, I'm sleepy. But let's go over my notes today. Yes, I did write Happy Thanksgiving because it was Thanksgiving when I read all this. So this first chapter we have is a personal experience that the author had when he was young, first year and a half of his legal career, or after that. He's moved in with one of his classmates from law school. They have moved all over Atlanta, so they moved to Midtown Atlanta, and this is like the nicest place they've ever lived. And he actually, so you know, he's driving around and the radio wasn't working right, but then it finally comes to work and it's Sly and the Family Stone, which, like, yes, love. So he's just jamming out, you know, he's young, in his 20s, So like it gets to like this one song he really likes, so he gets home, but he's like, I'm gonna wait till this song's over and then I'll go in the house, which yeah, I've done that plenty of times. But then he's sitting there on the residential street in his car, and in Atlanta, a special Atlanta SWAT car comes up, and it's very out of the ordinary, and so he's like, are they coming to me? Like, what's happening? Because he's kind of scared, because he's like, oh my gosh, is there a criminal around? Like, what's going on here? So he gets out the car, and immediately the SWAT people draw their guns at him, or one of them draws their gun at him, and so Brian Stevenson like freaks out. He's like his instinct was to run, because I mean, who wouldn't like flight or fright, you know, like you have a gun pointed at you. But he's like, no, I don't need to run, because that will only escalate the situation. But he's very nervous, and again, the officer is very nervous, and so Brian's like, it's okay, because the guy, he can tell that the guy with the gun's hand is shaking and all that. So eventually they find out that there had been just like break-ins reported in the area, and I guess because he's just a black guy sitting in his car, they were like, this is our guy. So it was really interesting to see that personal experience, and how these personal experiences have impacted him to go into the career path that he did, or how it maybe sparked something in him with his career, of maybe when he's been in a bit of a slump at times, being like, why am I doing this? But then he's like, I need to make a difference in my community, because he's like, I don't want other people to feel this fear that he felt, because like they even start searching his car without a warrant or anything, and he's like, what if I had drugs in there? What if I had been a poor person? What if I wasn't a law student? And all, like, you know, all these what ifs. So he took this and he said, I decided to talk to youth groups, churches, and community organizations about the challenge posed by the presumption of guilt assigned to the poor and people of color. I spoke at local meetings and tried to sensitize people to the need to insist on accountability from law enforcement. I argued that police should improve public safety without abusing people. Even when I was in Alabama, I made time for talks at community events whenever anyone asked. And I love this, that he saw an issue and he went out and, you know, did something about it and informed other people to be like, okay, if you're in this situation, this is what you need to do. We need to hold our law enforcement accountable, because what they were doing was illegal, like going through his car and all that, and pointing a gun at him, not telling him, you know, anything about the situation. And in 2025, I think we've seen a whole lot of this, because at some points, Brian Stevenson, he was wondering, he's like, are these real cops? Because they weren't in normal like cop uniforms, because they were the SWAT team or whatever. So so much more prevalent now. So it's been interesting. We get like some of those personal chapters, and then we go back to the case that is following Walter McMillan. Walter, I just have no idea how they could charge this guy and put him on death row, because at the time where the murder would have been happening, he was literally having or like his cousin or his sister or somebody was having a fish fry at his house with him there. He has 12 witnesses that are there, you know, like that were at the fish fry, working the fish fry, that knew he was there. He even had a police officer come and buy some food there, and, you know, just different people from the church as well who were, you know, there buying food from him that day. And, or home was the police officer. Yeah, the police officer. But then there was another guy who, yeah, was the uncle of the girl who was murdered, who he, you know, ran like a furniture store, and so he just needed to pick up like a check from, yeah, to collect money from Walter's mother for a purchase. So like even he was there, and he told them like, oh my gosh, my niece, you know, was brutally murdered. And I'm like, so how can they have all this evidence but still say that like he's guilty and put him on death row? Like, I do not get it. It blows my mind how the court system works. And it says, so in Florida and Alabama, now in Florida, there's restrictions on this, but in, at this time period in 1989, there wasn't. But now in Alabama, still, this is a thing where judges can overrule the jury. Yeah, I'm making sure I got all that right, because a lot of this legal stuff does go over my head, I will admit. But it says, okay, if the jury imposed or rejected death, that was the final judgment. Only Florida and Alabama allowed the jury's decision to be overridden by a judge, and Florida later put restrictions on the practice that severely curtailed it. It remains the law in Alabama, where judges almost exclusively use this power to turn life sentences into death sentences, although they're also authorized to reduce death verdicts to life if they so choose. So since 1976, judges in Alabama have overridden jury sentencing verdicts in capital cases 111 times. In 91% of these cases, judges replaced life verdicts from juries with death sentences. And I just don't get how people are so violent wanting the death sentence. Like, the world's a violent place. So then we go to our next chapter, and this is involving the case of Herbert Richardson, who is, he has a lot of issues. So he was a Vietnam vet, so he did come back with PTSD, but before that he had a really troubled childhood of his mother dying when he was a little boy, and you know, so on and so forth. And it says Herbert became one of thousands of combat veterans who end up in jail or prison after completing their military service. One of the country's least discussed post-war problems is how frequently combat veterans bring the traumas of war back with them and are incarcerated after returning to their communities. By the mid-1980s, nearly 20% of people in jails and prisons in the United States had served in the military. While the rate declined in the 1990s as the shadows cast by the Vietnam War began to recede, it has picked up again as a result of the military conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I saw that stat was interesting, but so much we see, as I always tell y'all, mental health is like the root of all issues. I'm not going to say all. I do think poverty just as much does the same, but I think those two, you know, kind of go hand in hand together. Because just seeing all that Herbert did to get into jail was just kind of crazy. He did not intend to kill anybody, but it happened, you know. It was in, what is that called? When they don't mean to. It happens in wrecks a lot. Man, it's something with manslaughter. I'm sorry that I'm not remembering. This is how you can't really bring up the mental state of the person in court. It says, he's not saying what I need him to say. His breathing was panic. He held his head and told me he had a severe headache. I didn't intend to kill anybody, and he has to explain that, he cried. I tried to comfort him. Mr. Richardson, we've covered this. The expert isn't allowed to speak to your mental state. He's testified that the bomb was designed to be detonated, but he can't really explain your motivations. The court won't permit that, and you really can't speak to that. So it's just really interesting how mental health is viewed in court. And so when Richardson gets to the day of his execution, he says, people have been asking him all day long, what can I do to help you? When I woke up in the morning, they kept coming to me. Can we get you some breakfast? At midday, they came to me. Can we get you some lunch? All day long, what can we do to help you? This evening, what do you want for your meal? How can we help you? Do you need stamps for your letters? Do you want water? Do you want coffee? Can we get you the phone? How can we help you? Herbert sighed and looked away. It's so strange, Brian. More people have asked me what they can do to help me in the last 14 hours of my life than ever asked me in the years when I was coming up. He looked at me, his face twisted in confusion, and they should have been doing this the whole time. That is what I'm telling y'all this month, is that the world would be a better place if we didn't look at people with judgment, but if we helped and were just there for people in our communities. And this is like, we go into Brian's thoughts. I gave Herbert one last long hug, but I was thinking about what he had said. I thought of all the evidence that the court had never reviewed about his childhood. I was thinking about all of the trauma and difficulty that had followed him home from Vietnam. I couldn't help but ask myself, where were these people when he really needed them? Where were all of those helpful people when Herbert was 3 and his mother died? Where were they when he was 7 and trying to recover from physical abuse? Where were they when he was a young teen struggling with drugs and alcohol? Where were they when he returned from Vietnam traumatized and disabled? Yeah, so we're about almost a third of the way into that book. I actually got to the halfway point and Something New Under the Sun yesterday, but I just didn't have time to update y'all on the book. And yeah, this book still isn't doing anything for me. I do think there's potential with this book, but it just wasn't executed properly. So my new notes, I have 3 new notes for y'all. Is this a satire of our world? Like, some of it just feels like so on the nose, where I'm like, is this satire? I'm not sure. So if you guys have read this book, do you know? Also, little thing has to be described. The chapter that I read yesterday, 50 pages in length. The one I just read, 41 pages in length. I am not about that. That is not for me. Let's just see if I can find... I'm going to read y'all this very long paragraph here. He turns the key in the ignition and backs out too fast. Then they're on the highway, crawling through the same traffic, their silence complete. In the burning hills, hobbled oaks kneel in the flames, the twisted limbs lost in conflagration and burning swiftly. A full crown is reduced to blackened glyph, inky signs in the bright night. When the trunks are dark and smoldering, the beetles come, scenting the infrared from miles away through sensors beneath their forelimbs. They fly 10, 20, 130 miles, drawn to the heat and the flame, and the newly charred brush. They fell from the brown and smoke-choked sky, as black as bullets, mating inside the still-burning fire. Under the smoky, oscillating light, a female fire beetle crawls along the blackened crawl of a burnt bush, her hard belly protected by a special wax secreted to hold in the body's moisture, to keep it from evaporating as she lays her eggs. In the months to come, her larvae will be born in the charred stump, grow in the charred stump, live off the charred stump, eating tunnels through defenseless matter, to emerge one day as a fully grown fire beetle, built to sense the heat of a faraway building, hurl its body in that direction for hours and hours of treacherous flight. Yeah, that was all one paragraph. This author loves adjectives. So many adjectives there, and I'm like, I do not need them. That is not my kind of writing style. I know some people like that, but it's not for me. Another thing is this showing how fake everything is in pop culture and media, plastic surgery, our food, you know, the synthetics in food, synthetics, I don't even know that's the right word. I'm not somebody who's like the Make America Healthy Again, whatever. I'm not really about that. Like you know, so there's just so much of, how a lot of stuff that we see is just a charade. And I'm saying a lot of stuff that we see like on TV, that we see on social media, on the internet, a lot of it is really fake or taken out of context. This really is a dystopian of kind of like a modern day America dystopia, I would say. So that's everything there. I am at the 25% mark in the White Queen. I will be reading some of this later, but the thing here is this is very episodic and insta love, which, I mean, if you know the real history, like these two married for love, and it was like very frowned upon for him to marry her because he's just took the throne of England and now he's marrying like a common woman, common if you will, like she still is from a wealthy family and everything, but just for a king to marry somebody middle class, that wasn't really ideal. They didn't really want that. I don't think anybody in the royal family did that again until, I don't know if it was Charles marrying Diana or William marrying Kate, somewhere like in that, where somebody who's an heir to the throne marries somebody like way below them. But so yeah, there's that insta love, and I know a lot of people don't really like that. I'm talking Brian and Ellen on Blood of My Blood, which I think those actors do have chemistry, but the way the romance was written, no, not so, it's confusing. But it's very reminiscent of that, where it's just like boom, boom, boom. Yeah, at this point I am thinking I do like the show better, because at first, when we first had the meeting of the two characters, there is a lot of depth to them, but now it just feels pretty shallow and, as I said, episodic. But that is everything. I've only read over 100 pages on Wednesday, which is kind of surprising since that was like my busiest day of the week so far anyway. I will be reading over 100 pages today because I'm at like 90 98 right now, I think. 98 pages is what I'm at. So as I said, I do plan to read The White Queen, and I will definitely read more than 2 pages in there. I have not hauled any books this week, but we do have Black Friday tomorrow in a few hours, so we might buy some. I have some fun doing that. And I have completed 2 books this week, both of them being in the 4-star category, which is great. We love that. I hope y'all had a happy reading week. I hope y'all had a happy Thanksgiving. As I said in my video that came out previously this week, I'm thankful for all of y'all that watch every week and comment, or just, you know, interact by giving a like or share or whatever. Or even if you don't do any of that and you just watch the video, I am thankful for that, because I am so blessed to have this place where I can talk about what I'm reading and just have a place to like be heard, put my voice out there. That's, you know, the community of YouTube and of the book community I am incredibly thankful for. So once again, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave a food, fall, Thanksgiving emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.